Hello and welcome to Conversations With, our monthly series of informal and enlightening conversations between the leading edge teacher and author, Jim Self, and some of today's most progressive and connected teachers, channels, and authors. Now, here's our host, Jim Self.
The thing that has me kind of fascinated, and I almost want to use the word concerned, but that's not quite right, but yes, it is at the same time, is people are going to begin to act out in some very interesting ways because the foundation that allowed the game of knowing yourself based on the mom, dad, teacher, minister, and the externalness of is now gone. And it's not going to be understood that it's gone because we're going to continue to play in our habits. But because it's gone, our expectations and the instantaneousness of reaction is going to be a very large aspect of what people are going to begin to experience very much in these next 3 months, very much. And going into the rest of this year, that fundamental foundation of what we think is no longer in place to support the habits that we live by.
You talk about, kids taking on the patterns from other people, and you just remind me of something I shared the other day in a workshop that I was doing on this cruise I was on. It's one of the most powerful moments of my life in terms of understanding human dynamics. I did a theatre course when I was 19 to 22, and it was a brilliant course because it introduced me to so many holistic things, Alexander technique, so many different things. And what was key for me was one day a mask expert was brought in, somebody who worked with masks in theatre. And they did an exercise. They split our group into small groups. They split our group of 20 down into 4 groups. And there were 5 masks, and each mask had a different face on it. So there was the smiley, happy, joyous mask. There was the sad mask. There was the angry mask. There was the mask that looked a little chaotic and a little mad. And then there was the silent, blank mask that just had no face. And what they did was they didn't tell us what mask they were putting on our face.
Oh.
And we as a group of 5 would have these masks put onto us while everyone else watched. And we were not allowed to use words, but we were allowed to use sound. So we could make sounds and noises. And we then had to interact with each other for about 20 minutes. And by the end of that 20 minutes, every single one of us had completely inhabited the characteristics of the way our face looked based on the way we were reacted to by the rest of the group.
Wow.
And for me, it was a revelation. And it was, at that time, I was beginning to open up my own psychic intuition and knowing, and I was already a keen observer of people. So it's something that stayed with me all through my work, because the reality I know is that any of us can radically change. Like one example I often give in workshops when people are talking about they want to change but they don't know how, is I say to them, if you wanted to, you could stand up right now and shout your head off at me, or you could throw a chair around the room, and people usually look a bit shocked at that, but the reality is we can do anything, but we are socialized. And I often talk about, you're sitting there because you think you should be sitting there, and you think that I should be at the front because I'm the one in this moment who might be able to offer you some clarity. So we get these roles. And this might seem a bit of a random connection, but I often think, isn't it amazing that cars on the road don't just drive on the pavement? We're walking on these sidewalks, and we have this amazing trust that we're all in this system that we agree to.
Yes,
and
there's your big word, agreement.
Yeah, and anybody, we walk a lot. People talk about feeling unsafe in the world and how the world is safe, and I think, how many times you walk down a sidewalk where there's no barrier and someone doesn't drive into you, they carry on the road and they follow the rules of road safety. So for me, there is a societal desire for that imprint to exist. And the people you're talking about with the reactions that we're going to see, and that I think we're already seeing, and I've certainly been tracking and seeing this for a few years now, I just feel that it's going to escalate. I just think there's going to be more of it as we keep going through the next year or so. It's basically the people who don't have any internal space. So they're living in the external. They're following the external impulses to know how to behave, and there's no internal space in them to be able to process something that happens that's different. So all they do is they kind of try and push back out with their energy against where there was a block. The child tantruming again. So, the problem is that, children generally aren't extremely violent or extremely destructive, generally. You do get some kids very occasionally. But, adults, there's a different thing. But also, the way that our world is. I often look at our world and I don't quite understand why we have the things that we have that kind of surround us, and how those stimuli that we have around us, whether it's violent torture movies or adrenaline-based games that we're supposed to follow and get hyped up, and I get that they have their place, and I'm sure there are people listening who'll go, well, I actually quite enjoy playing a violent video game, and I get that can be an experience, but I also see how in the mass it's kind of both a desensitizer and a relief to that which is not getting relief because there is a lack of energy flow in the rest of the body. It keeps us in these small places. I think those kinds of stimuli keep us in these small places. I just want to throw one other thing on the table, which is, and I know we've seen a spate of violent crime, especially very recently, as you and I were talking about before we started the show. Yet the irony is, statistics show that violence is going down, and violent crime has actually gone down. So I find that very interesting. I think we've seen some bigger extremes in society, but for as long as we have war going on in the world and justified by countries, I'm almost shocked that we're shocked that takes place in society. I'm not shocked that we're sad. I understand that, but I'm shocked that we're shocked, or people will say, gosh, isn't it horrific this has happened? Because I also then want to say, well, we're all also totally fine with what's going on over in Afghanistan, apparently, and how is that different? So that's where I can't quite get my head into the smaller box of the way of seeing it.
Well, let me focus this in a particular way here, because you said two things that are really very, very useful. Your definition of the five masks and the experience that you observed and experienced is what society is. I'm told I'm not okay, I'm not smart, I'm not attractive, I don't fit, nobody's going to like me, I'm never going to get a good job, and I'm too poor to have anything in my life. Those are masks. And we have learned, as in our growing up space, in our search for ourselves in the external, to simply read what other people's expressions of us are. And those expressions many times are their bad lifetime playing out in that moment, and they just irrationally spew words out of their mouth from their own pain. But what happens is, Lee, you're not smart, you're not attractive, you'll never be a good singer, and what's wrong with you begins to be the mask that we wear. And we wear it without ever reviewing where the mask came from. And what makes what you just said about violence so interesting to this is this shift that we have all that are listening to this call been experiencing, witnessing, growing into, anticipating, being excited about as spiritual beings becoming spiritual beings in human bodies, is things are changing on that violent level. Your statistics are very accurate. It's calming down, but not according to Fox News, not according to the local media, not according to the energetic that holds and stirs that pot. And one of the things that is going to be very clearly taken apart piece by piece is these false structures that say you're not okay. And so let me touch on something because I can, and many are interested in this. And I'm going to say this very softly and very gently, and it is a different point of view, but it is the point of view from where you and I are having the conversation for those listening. Is this event, so let me put it in perspective. So we just closed this door on 1212 of that third dimension. We basically, spiritually, start to take the structure that allows the I'm not okayness, the war, the sarcasm, the rage, the resentment, the domination, slavery, incest, etc., to continue unconsciously, even though we're all becoming very conscious of it. And because we're becoming conscious of it, it is no longer an acceptable unconscious pattern that we are willing to live within. And so, again, very softly, you have 20 young people under the age of 10, and you have 8 adults that come into agreement. Make no mistake, this was an agreement. As a spiritual agreement, they said, enough. This cannot continue. And as this new vibrational field of light, well-being, beauty, appreciation, gratitude comes into presence, we are going to be the first that stand up and make a statement. Now, hear me softly, because some will say that's an outrageous thing to even consider. Those were in complete agreement to simply create a statement so loud that within a period of 5 days, a legitimate conversation about gun control, murder, it'll extend into violence in the video games, it'll extend into violence in the movies, it will extend into how children are raised in the future. That statement that those 28 people made will simply change a fundamental, accepted, unconscious process that was held very strongly in the third dimension, but will no longer exist within just a few short years. That's what that statement was when you view it from this spiritual space, fifth dimensional space that everyone's stepping into. There will be many more such statements, not in the same format, not in the same presentation, but you have a world economy, you have world geopolitics, you have weather patterns, you have earth changes. All of these are very much in the shifting from what was a third dimensional rigid structure that was broken to a fifth, sixth, seventh dimensional consciousness of beauty and well-being. But a transition is not going to be easy in these next couple of years, particularly the next 3 months and particularly the next 3 years are not going to be what light workers expect to come out of 1212 and 1221. It's going to be a very interesting experience, but at the end of it, the world will be a very different place because of the light workers and the ones who are waking up, becoming conscious, and saying enough. And you're going to see it in the most wonderful ways, and yet the most challenging ways.
That's so bang on target for me, Jim, and it's kind of what's been coming through for me in the last few years. And I think probably a year to 2 years ago, somewhere in that time period, was when I would say I slightly sobered up, as in the light worker aspect of me, and I'd been working as a public channeler, working a lot, producing a lot of channels, so all high frequencies.
Yeah.
positive intention. There came a point when, after my own crash down to earth in my personal life, which was brilliant because it then allowed me to build a more solid foundation in which to run those frequencies in my body and in myself. That was when I started to kind of look at the picture and go, hang on, there may be an iceberg or two up ahead. It's not just that someone's coming to save us, or, whether it's whatever people believe, the aliens are coming to save us, or the angels are coming to save us, or because that passiveness, to me, holds a certain danger to it in terms of your human reality. Now, there are some who may be listening who their role is just to hold frequency and just to sit at home and meditate, and that's wonderful. We all have our part. One of the things I have addressed a few times this year that I find disheartening, and I see it going on, is the lack of acceptance of the diversity within the Lightworker community itself. I've seen some people arguing with each other on forums, or posting comments or emails in my direction about, you can't talk about the negative stuff, this is bad, and then I've seen someone else going, we've got to be practical, never mind the meditation. They're all kind of, so for me it's like, well, can you see the war that's existing within us? And if that war exists within us, we don't strengthen either. And I can feel terribly sad about what just happened at the school, like everybody else can on a human level. But when I look at this thing energetically and from a macro level, my first question is, my sense of it is, so the boy who did the shooting, or the young man, I guess, is that the age he died at? Is that why they were the target? Is that the age where he lost his innocence? Is that the age where something happened to him that he could never recover from? So, and then the other piece for me is the macro picture of, I think in many ways it is a heart opening for people, but I think once the heart opens and once you keep opening, you start to become more holistic, and you're not just grieving for what happened in the school in your own country. You're starting to make the connections and go, oh, hang on a second, all the children that are dying in this war that our country is behind, or other things. And I don't think it's about pointing the finger at who's to blame. I just think it's about seeing the whole thing very clearly. And as you said, it's a sobering time. But it's funny, I was just today coming back from Denver to Boulder, where I live, and I was just tuning in a little bit, and I do think it's going to be challenging. And my V always said 2012 is not 2012. They said the period is 2012 to 2015. So I smiled when you said the next 3 years, because they always said the changes will be more incremental than everyone is expecting. And the main window is 2012 to 2015. Then there's going to be a bracket from 2015 to 2020, but it's these next 3 years. But I do feel good about it. I do feel that life will push through destruction, even if destruction has to rise its head maybe several times in order for that life to push through. And regarding the whole Fox News thing, I unplugged from the TV many years ago, and I also find the vibration of, it's one of the things I've talked about for many years, do not look at the media, because the media is not the truth. And I've had friends who worked in the army, and someone I just met recently who was Black Ops, who was telling me about being out in the field around the time of the hunt for bin Laden, and how he said what was going on out there was not what was being reported. And that was when I knew I had to walk away. And so I've always known there's a disconnect there. But unfortunately, you do have the people either in your life or that you meet who absolutely buy into that story. But then we're all where we need to be, and I think everyone's going to get shaken up in the next few years in different ways.
Yeah. And one of the things that we will all learn in this process is that you can't be compassionate and caring and externally without being compassionate and caring internally. Mm. You can't love others from a place where you don't love yourself. Mm. And in this vibrations of beginning to draw your attention in, beginning to experience, and everybody will experience This is one of these vibrational shifts that I will tell you will happen in the next coming days. 12/12, 12/21, 12 is an event. The world's not going to end, but it will begin to place vibrational choices, frequency ranges into the consciousness. And my example is you're caught in the freezing cold water, and right over there is a beach that's dry and warm and attractive. But many to date are so caught up in their arguing with the water being cold in the storm that they don't choose to just swim to the beach, the transition being the swimming. But what is about to happen in the most beautiful and positive way is that beach is going to begin to illuminate for everybody. It's going to get brighter. It's going to get more inviting. It's going to get more delicious. It's going to get more, I want that. And even in that place, people will tread water in the coldness going, oh, I want that so bad. And then they will figure out that if they just move in that direction, they will find themselves on that beach. And that's what this whole awakening process is very much about. And I say often, you have been all along, in the last 3, 4, 5 years particularly, losing, if you're paying attention and you're being intentional about who am I, you have been losing the who you are not. All of that I'm not okay has been peeling away and falling away. But what actually is about to become much more appealing and attractive when you decide that the beach is where I want to be, you're going to start to find this dinner party I mentioned at the beginning. You're going to start to find this warmth of the beach. You're going to start to find that I have a choice. I don't have to argue with the cold water or tread cold water. I simply can be there because it's a choice that's far more appealing and available. And that's what people are going to experience. And what's so important for everybody listening and all of the light workers in the world, you do fabulous stuff, but you have to do you first. You have to begin to appreciate yourself, hold value in yourself. It's not service to others and wearing yourself into the ground doing it. It is simply beginning to recognize that you can hold this level of light that is now beginning to emanate from you, quietly, focused, and with great self-appreciation and gratitude. And you're going to find in that simple awareness the beach that will be much more inviting to stand on.
Funny, as you were saying about the beach, when we were at Vienna together at the Crimson Circle Midsummer, in the presentation I did, there was a channel from Zach, and I remember the opening words were, "The sun is coming, the sun is coming." And they were so excited. Like when I got off stage, I was struck by how excited they were about the next few years. It was palpable. And
yes, I remember.
It's wonderful because it's not so much that we need the hope, but I think sometimes we need the direction of exactly as you described. There is a beach you can get to. You just have to swim there. And the self-love piece is so key. Again, it's about, for me, creating that space inside the body. I'm someone who, you described very accurately some of my story earlier. You said something like, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough. I had all of those can'ts and couldn't because I'd ingested them from society. I would say the one place maybe I was clear with myself as a creator, because since I was a child, I was always creating things. So I was happy in that place, and I understood that place. That never got dented. But the rest of me and any sense of identity I had as a human was very limited. So for a long time, I think I compensated by giving out in order to have an experience. And the self-love piece that in my own channels just kept coming through again and again and again and again. I think it kind of goes against the programming we have in our society, because there are subtle things within our media, our magazines, anything that kind of is in the external world around us that actually is designed to keep us small. Because if you keep people small and if you don't let them believe in their own power, they're not going to cause too much trouble and they're not going to buck the system. And if that suits the person who wants the system in place, then that works for everybody. So the interesting thing for me about, whatever you want to call them, those who want the system in place or have put the system in place for a long time, is they're going through the same rebalancing process. And that's why it's kind of not a good idea to go, we must fight Fox News or we must fight. It's not about fighting, because they're going through their own shifts as this vibration leaves the planet, this dimension. But the most important thing is to grow and harness the opposite. And without self-love, you can't do that. And I often meet these spiritual or environmental activists who are so angry, and they're so clever. They've got so much knowledge. They've got knowledge I don't have about the environment because they have scientific minds. And I'm aware that if they could just heal their own anger, the space in their body and the energy that would flow through them that would help them support what they're holding would be so beneficial for the planet. But the self-love piece is challenging. I mean, it's a process, and you have to kind of go inside your own body and your own energy field, and one by one, sometimes en masse, but often one by one, find the piece of you that was bruised somewhere along the way and gently nurture and caress it back to life. And sometimes people just don't want to go to that pain, but it's the most rewarding journey if you can start doing it. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I think you're going to see, particularly in these next 3 years, and it's exactly in the same context, you're going to see people rise up from anger. They have been suppressed and depressed for so long. And this shooting event is a very exact example of this, where that whole level of a grouping of anonymous people and association and corporation with no face, called the NRA. I'm not beating them up or making them okay, but anonymous, has a ruling power to dominate a philosophical point of view, a consciousness. And here, within a week, within 28 enormously brave spirits who said enough, they have generated a response, and people are rising up in consciousness that says simply, that's it, enough, I'm going to stand up and speak out. Others are enraged over this, but that enragement is really the aspect where within them they have been suppressed and dominated. And you're going to see tremendous shifts coming about in people in very many multiple ways expressing their need for freedom. And it's going to show up in very awkward, clumsy, unpleasant ways in these next 3 years. But everyone in the next 20 years will become free. And I just pick a number, not so arbitrarily, but in those next 20 years, you will not recognize what we understand as acceptable societies, philosophies, levels of consciousness that we are willing to submit to. They will be gone.
If you enjoyed this highlight from Conversations With, join Jim Self live on the Awakening Zone Network. That's awakeningzone.com. If you're looking for free tools for your personal and spiritual growth, if you want to be who you came here to be, visit masteringalchemy.com, where you can learn more about Jim, his work, and future guests. Our theme song is Hands of Love by Barry Goldstein. May you experience laughter and grace on your journey home.